Imagine a land rich in ancient kingdoms, endless savannas, dense rainforests, and a coastline that once bustled with traders, explorers, and empire. A land where more than 250 ethnic groups thrived independently: the Yoruba, the Igbo, the Hausa Fulani, and many more. Now imagine that this diverse, vibrant land would one day be drawn into a single country by the stroke of a colonial pen. This is the fascinating story of how Nigeria became a country. Long before Nigeria appeared on any map, the region was home to powerful and sophisticated civilizations. In the north, the Hausa city-states and the Kanem-Bornu Empire thrived through trade and Islamic scholarship. These kingdoms were connected to the trans-Saharan trade routes, exchanging goods like gold, salt, and slaves with North Africa and the Middle East. In the west, the Yoruba kingdoms, especially Ile-Ife and Oyo Empire, boasted artistic brilliance, structured governance, and spiritual traditions. The Oyo Empire, for instance, had a cavalry and a complex administrative system. In the east, the Igbo people lived in decentralized societies, a system often called Igbo democracy, where villages were ruled by councils and elders rather than kings. And along the coast, the Kingdom of Benin dazzled Portuguese visitors with its wide streets, organized governance, and striking bronze artworks. These were not primitive lands waiting to be discovered; they were already thriving civilizations. The arrival of the Europeans, 1400s to 1800s, the Portuguese were the first Europeans to arrive in the late 15th century, soon followed by the Dutch, British, and French. What started as trade in spices, ivory, and textiles turned into something darker: the transatlantic slave trade. Over 12 million Africans were forcibly taken from West Africa, many from present-day Nigeria. Coastal cities like Badagry, Calabar, and Bonny became major slave trading ports. But by the early 1800s, with the rise of abolitionist movements in Britain, the slave trade began to wane, and the British turned their attention from trading people to controlling lands. With slavery abolished, Britain now had another mission: empire building. In 1861, the British annexed Lagos as a crown colony. By the late 1800s, they expanded control over Yoruba territories, negotiated with local rulers, and used both diplomacy and force to dominate regions. In the north, the powerful Sokoto Caliphate, an Islamic empire, resisted British control. But by 1903, after a series of military campaigns, the British had conquered it too. Meanwhile, in the east, resistance movements like the Aber Women's War and others stood up to British intrusion, but the colonial machine was relentless. The Birth of a Nation, on paper, 1914, here comes the most dramatic twist. Despite the vast differences in culture, religion, languages, and governance. In 1914, the British decided to merge the northern and southern protectorates, purely for administrative convenience and economic gain. Who made this decision? One man, Lord Frederick Lugard, the British colonial governor, and his British wife, Flora Shaw, is credited with giving Nigeria its name, derived from the Niger River. Lugard believed in ruling the north through traditional rulers, indirect rule, while the south was more influenced by Western education and Christianity. But make no mistake, Nigeria was not born out of unity, it was born out of British colonial strategy. The people of the North and South had little say in the creation of this new country. It was a forced union of diversity without consultation. The rise of Nigerian nationalism, 1920s to 1950s, over time, a new generation of Nigerians began to demand a voice. Western education spread, especially in the South, and educated elites started to question British rule. Figures like Herbert Macaulay, the grandfather of Nigerian nationalism, Nnamdi Azikiwe, the Zik of Africa, Obafemi Awolowo, advocate for Yoruba interests, Ahmadu Bello, leader of the North, and many others, led protests, started newspapers, and formed political parties. World War II was a turning point. Many Nigerians fought for Britain, and when they returned home, they asked, "Why should we fight for freedom abroad while we are not free at home?" After decades of pressure, negotiations, and constitutional conferences, the British finally agreed to grant independence. And so, on October 1, 1960, the Nigerian flag was raised, the Union Jack lowered, and Nigeria officially became an independent country. Nnamdi Azikiwe became Nigeria's first Governor-General, and later, the first President. It was a moment of pride and celebration. The giant of Africa was born, but the challenges were far from over. Soon after independence, Nigeria's deep ethnic, religious, and regional divides, which were never resolved by colonial rulers, began to surface. Military coups, civil war, the Biafra War from 1967 to 1970, corruption and dictatorship, struggles for democracy. Yet, despite all these trials, Nigeria remains one of the most influential nations in Africa. It is the most populous country on the continent, the largest economy, and a cultural powerhouse thanks to Nollywood, Afrobeat music, and a young, dynamic population. What makes Nigeria a country? Nigeria did not become a country because of shared identity, it became a country because of colonial necessity. But over time, through struggle, unity, art, protest, music, and democracy, the people of Nigeria have slowly shaped the country into their own. It's a land of diversity and resilience, and while the challenges are many, so are the hopes. From kingdoms to colony, from forced union to independence, from war to democracy, the story of Nigeria is still being written. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories from history. Let us know in the comments, which African country's story should we cover next? Nigeria, long live Nigeria.